Christmas lights blinked frantically along Fifth Avenue, reflecting in the mirrored windows of the Millennium Tower. Raphael Miller adjusted his Navy maintenance uniform and took a deep breath before presenting his badge at the reception desk. 36 years old, with prematurely graying hair at his temples and calloused hands that told stories of hard work, he shouldn't have been there on that night of December 23rd. He should have been home with Isabella, his 14-year-old daughter, watching some random Christmas movie, eating cheap popcorn, and pretending life wasn't so heavy. But his supervisor had called at 5 in the afternoon, voice urgent, offering an extra shift with double pay. Raphael didn't have the luxury of refusing. Isabella's programming course bill was due in 2 days, and that brilliant girl, with her exceptional talent for mathematics and her frightening ease with computer code, deserved every opportunity he never had. The service elevator smelled of cleaning products and loneliness. Raphael closed his eyes during the ascent to the 42nd floor, where the Tech Vision Company party was taking place, the tech giant that occupied 3 entire floors of the building. He didn't belong in that world of French champagne and sophisticated canapes. He was invisible, a ghost who fixed what broke so others could shine without interruption. The elevator door opened into a side corridor, far from the main hall. Raphael could hear the party's buzz, loud laughter, soft electronic music. He checked the service order on his worn tablet, checked the air conditioning system in the main ballroom, replaced 3 burnt-out light bulbs in the executive corridor, ensure everything worked perfectly for the important guests. Always for others, never for him. 15 years earlier, Raphael Miller had another name in circles that mattered. He was the piano prodigy, the poor boy from Camden who played as if he were born with the keys beneath his fingers. A full scholarship to the conservatory, invitations to festivals in Europe, renowned teachers saying he would be the next big name in English classical music. But life has a cruel habit of tearing dreams out by the roots when least expected. He finished checking the air conditioning faster than he'd imagined. The system was working perfectly. Raphael took the aluminum ladder and began changing the light bulbs in the corridor, working on autopilot as his mind wandered. He thought of Isabella studying at home, probably solving those complex algorithm problems she loved, her face illuminated by the bluish light of the old computer he had bought secondhand the previous year. The girl was his redemption, proof that something good had come from his mistakes. His marriage to Julia had been a mistake from the start. He knew it. She did too. 2 broken hearts trying to heal each other, as if added pain could turn into joy. It lasted 3 years before Julia left only a farewell note on the kitchen table, jumbled words explaining that she couldn't pretend anymore, that she needed to find herself, that motherhood suffocated her. Raphael woke up alone that morning with a 1-year-old baby in his arms and no idea how he would be both father and mother at the same time. He sold the piano the following month, not out of immediate financial necessity, but because he couldn't bear to look at the instrument. Each key was a reminder of what could have been, of who he was before everything fell apart. The money paid for 6 months of rent and diapers, and the silence that settled in the empty room where the piano used to be became his most faithful companion. Raphael climbed down the ladder and put the burnt-out light bulbs in his toolbox. There were still 40 minutes left until the end of his shift. He could leave early, no one would notice, but the supervisor had promised to pay for the full 4 hours only if he stayed until the end. 40 minutes. He decided to do one last round of the areas to make sure everything was in order. That's when he heard laughter coming from the main hall. Curiosity, that irresistible human flaw, pulled him towards the half-open door. Raphael peeked in discreetly. The ambiance was stunning. Crystal chandeliers, tables decorated with extremely expensive floral arrangements, waiters circulating with gleaming trays, and in the center, imposing, untouched, a Steinway grand piano that probably cost more than he would earn in 10 years of work. Raphael's chest tightened. 15 years without playing. 15 years running from any melody that reminded him of the past. But there was something about that night. Perhaps the Christmas spirit mixed with exhaustion. Perhaps the loneliness that hurt more acutely in December, that pulled him into the hall like an invisible magnet. He shouldn't, He knew he shouldn't, but his feet moved on their own. Raphael entered through the corner of the hall, taking advantage of most guests being concentrated near the bar. No one paid attention to a man in a blue uniform. He was part of the decor, as relevant as an empty chair. He approached the piano, his heart beating erratically, his hands trembling slightly. The varnished wood reflected the colorful lights of the room. Beautiful, perfect, untouched all night, as if waiting for someone specific. A waiter rushed past and, without looking, offered a glass of champagne. Raphael accepted by reflex, took a quick sip, just to calm his nerves. The liquid went down burning, sweet and bitter at the same time. He placed the glass on the piano, sat on the upholstered bench, adjusted the distance. His hands hovered over the keys, hesitant, as if touching embers. Then, as if 15 years hadn't passed, as if time were merely a cruel illusion, Raphael began to play. The melody emerged naturally, flowing from somewhere deep he thought he had buried forever. It wasn't a famous song. It wasn't something anyone would recognize. It was his. Only his. A composition born on a distant summer night, when he was 21 and believed that love could save anyone from anything. The notes were melancholic, full of yearning, a conversation between hope and disillusionment. He closed his eyes and let himself go, forgetting where he was, forgetting the uniform, forgetting that he didn't belong in that place. For 3 precious minutes, Raphael Miller was once again who he was before his world collapsed. The music filled the hall. Conversations quieted. People stopped drinking, turned towards the piano. But Raphael saw none of it. He was lost in the melody, in the memories each chord evoked. Her face, her smile, her promise that they would be together forever, no matter what happened. Lies, all lies. On the private terrace of the 42nd floor, isolated from the party noise by tempered glass doors, Cecilia Vance Allister watched the city below. At 40, she had everything money could buy and nothing her heart needed. Executive Director of Tech Vision, heiress to an empire built by her ruthless father, the woman Forbes magazine called the Queen of Silicon. Limitless power, endless solitude. The party was held in her honor, celebrating another year of stratospheric profits, but Cecilia couldn't bear to feign interest in empty conversations about stock markets and corporate mergers. She preferred the isolation of the terrace, the cold December air cutting across her face, the glass of red wine she held more out of habit than a real desire to drink. 40 years old, single, childless. No family beyond executives paid to smile in her presence. Her father had died 3 years earlier, taking with him the secrets and manipulations that built that empire. Cecilia inherited everything, but the will came with no instruction manual on how to fill the void. She was about to go back inside, fulfill her role as a smiling hostess, when she heard the first notes of the piano. Something shifted in the air, a specific frequency, a combination of chords that her brain recognized even before her heart processed it. No, impossible. The glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the marble floor of the terrace. Red wine spread like blood, but Cecilia didn't notice. She moved through the glass doors as if in a trance, politely pushing people aside, making her way through the crowd until she could see. There he was, a man in a blue uniform at the piano playing the music. No one else in the world should know. The music that a poor boy from Camden used to play for her in secret 15 years ago, when she was just a rich, rebellious girl who believed love was stronger than anything. The music that disappeared along with him, without explanation, without farewell, without anything but a silence that hurt more than any words could. Cecilia stopped 3 meters from the piano, paralyzed. She couldn't breathe properly. She couldn't think. The man had graying hair at his temples, wrinkles around his eyes, hands marked by time. But it was him. Impossible. Yet, it was. Raphael finished the music. The silence that followed was dense, heavy with unspoken emotions. He slowly opened his eyes and met her gaze. The world stopped spinning. Seconds stretched into hours. Raphael couldn't tear his gaze away from those green eyes that had haunted his dreams for 15 years. Cecilia. Not the 25-year-old girl he had known, but the woman she had become. More elegant, more distant, but unmistakably her. The same intense gaze, the same way she slightly tilted her head when she was processing something impossible. The people around them began to applaud politely, not understanding what they were witnessing. To them, it was just an employee who played the piano well. For Raphael and Cecilia, it was the past invading the present without permission. Raphael abruptly stood up from the bench, almost knocking it over. His first instinct was to flee, to disappear as he had 15 years before. But his feet were glued to the floor. His legs wouldn't obey his brain's desperate commands. Cecilia took a step forward, then another, approaching him with the caution of someone approaching an apparition that might vanish at any second. "Mr. Miller," she said, and her voice was too firm, too controlled, as if she needed every ounce of self-control not to crumble right there. "I need you to come with me. There's a technical issue in my office that requires immediate attention." It wasn't true. Both knew it. But it was the excuse she invented with the speed of desperation, the only way to get him out of there without creating a scandal in front of 200 employees and investors. Raphael merely nodded, unable to form words. He picked up his toolbox with trembling hands and followed Cecilia through the hall. Curious glances followed. Them. Employees whispered softly, speculating. The executive director had never, in 5 years of company parties, paid attention to any maintenance staff. Why now? Why that man specifically? The questions hung in the air as Cecilia and Raphael disappeared down the executive corridor. Her office was on the top floor, accessible only by a private elevator that required iris recognition. Cecilia passed the biometric verification. The doors slid open silently. They entered. The cabin was entirely mirrored, multiplying their images into infinity. Raphael saw 1,000 reflections of himself, all equally lost, all equally unprepared for that moment. Cecilia kept her eyes fixed on the numbers rising on the panel. 43, 44, 45. The silence was so dense that Raphael could hear his own heart beating erratically. He wanted to say something, anything, but the words had evaporated. What do you say to someone you abandoned without explanation? What do you say to someone you never stopped loving, even when you pretended to have forgotten? The doors opened to a private hall, all decorated in shades of gray and white. Minimalist, elegant, cold. So different from the Cecilia Raphael had known, that girl who wore floral dresses and laughed too, loudly, not caring about others' opinions. Her office was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of London. The city gleamed below, millions of lights twinkling like earthly stars. Cecilia locked the door behind them. Raphael placed his toolbox on the floor, feeling ridiculous in his blue uniform amidst the absolute luxury that surrounded him. She walked to the built-in bar, poured 2 glasses of whiskey with ice, and offered one to him. Raphael accepted, more for the gesture than for the desire to drink. 15 years, she finally said, and her voice was so controlled it hurt to hear. 15 years without a word, without an explanation, without anything. Raphael took a long sip of whiskey, feeling the liquid burn down his throat. He didn't know where to start, how to explain the inexplicable, how to translate into words the night his entire life fell apart. "I can explain," he said, and his voice sounded weaker than he intended. "Can you?" Cecilia gave a bitter, humorless laugh. "Because I spent 15 years imagining explanations, Raphael. 15 years building theories in my head about why you simply disappeared. And do you know what conclusion I came to?" Raphael didn't answer. He didn't need to. He saw the pain in her eyes, the solidified hurt transformed into armor. "My father paid you," Cecilia continued, each word a stab. "I don't know how much. I never asked. But I know he offered you money to leave my life, and you accepted. Because one day you were there, saying you loved me, that nothing would separate us, and the next day you were gone. You changed your number, your address, disappeared from the conservatory, as if you had never existed. No, Raphael said, and the word came out with more force than he expected. It wasn't like that. Then how was it? Cecilia took a step forward, her eyes shining with unshed tears. Explain it to me, Raphael. Make me understand how a man who claimed to love me could abandon me without looking back. Raphael placed the glass on the table, his hands trembling violently. The truth had been stuck in his throat for 15 years, heavy as lead, sharp as glass. He had never told anyone, not even Julia during their 3 years of failed marriage. Not even his mother, who died 6 years ago without understanding why her son had destroyed his own life. They came to my house, Raphael began, and his voice was just a whisper. The night before I was going to propose to you, 3 men, they said they worked for your father. Cecilia turned pale but didn't interrupt. They offered money, yes, a lot of money. Enough money to pay for college, to help my mother, to secure my future. I refused. I sent them away. I told them you weren't for sale. And then they changed their strategy. Raphael closed his eyes, the memory still too vivid, too painful. They said that if I didn't accept, your father would destroy your inheritance, that you would be disinherited, cut off from the family, left with nothing. They said he had the power to ruin my name in the music world, to ensure I never played anywhere. But the real threat, the one that broke me, was against my mother. Raphael opened his eyes, meeting Cecilia's horrified gaze. She was 62, working as a cleaner in 3 different houses to help support me at the conservatory. They knew where she worked. They knew her routine. They said accidents happen, that elderly people are fragile, that it would be a shame if something happened to her. No, Cecilia whispered, bringing a hand to her mouth. No. Raphael felt tears burn his eyes, but he didn't let them fall. They gave me 24 hours to disappear from your life. They said if I told you anything, the consequences would be immediate. So I did what I had to do. I protected you from your own father. I protected my mother from dangerous men. And I destroyed my own life in the process. The silence that followed was the kind that precedes earthquakes. Cecilia took 2 steps, back as if she had been punched in the stomach. She leaned against the table, breathing with difficulty, processing the magnitude of the revelation. He lied to me, she said, more to herself than to Raphael. When I asked where you were, he said you had accepted a bribe. He showed me papers, bank documents. He said men like you always had a price, and that I should be grateful to have discovered your true nature before making a bigger mistake. They were fake documents, Raphael said. I never accepted anything. Cecilia looked at him, truly looked, as if seeing him for the first time that night. She saw the wrinkles around his eyes, the graying hair, the calloused hands. She saw the 15 years of hard work written in every detail of his face, in every invisible scar of a life that could have been completely different. I believed him, she whispered. My own father. I believed you had sold me for money. I lived 15 years hating you, thinking the love I felt was a lie. And all that time, you were sacrificing yourself for me. The words hung in the air, laden with an ancient pain that finally found a name. Raphael took a step forward, hesitant, like someone approaching something sacred and broken at the same time. I never stopped loving you, he said, and for the first time in 15 years, he allowed the truth to come out unfiltered. Not when I married another woman, trying to forget. Not when I sold my piano because every note reminded me of you. Not when everything fell apart and I found myself alone, working 3 jobs to support a daughter. You were always here. He touched his own chest. Always. Cecilia finally broke down. The tears she had held back for 15 years flowed uncontrollably, washing away the solidified hurt, cracking the armor she had so carefully built. Raphael opened his arms, a silent invitation, and she practically ran to him, burying her face in his shoulder, letting all those years of pain pour out at once. They remained like that for long minutes, embracing in the middle of that luxurious office. Two people cruelly separated by fate, finally finding their way back to each other. Outside the enormous windows, London continued to gleam, indifferent to the human dramas unfolding in its glass and concrete towers. When Cecilia finally pulled away, her eyes were red but lighter, as if a 15-year burden had been lifted from her shoulders. She brought her hand to Raphael's face, touching him with the delicacy of someone touching something precious they thought they had lost forever. "Tell me everything," she asked. "These 15 years. Your life. Your daughter. I need to know." Raphael sat on the white leather sofa, so different from the worn sofa in his living room where Isabella did her homework. Cecilia sat beside him, close enough for their knees to almost touch, far enough for both to breathe. Outside, fireworks from some private party lit up the London sky, but inside that office, time seemed to have stopped. After I disappeared, he began with words that had accumulated for years. I moved to the outskirts of London. Camden held too many memories for me. I got a job in an auto parts factory, night shift. During the day, I tried to pick up odd jobs as a bricklayer, electrician, anything that paid. "And the music?" Cecilia asked softly. Raphael shook his head. "There was no music. There was nothing but survival. My mother fell ill 6 months later. Heart problems. She needed expensive medications, constant appointments. I worked 16 hours a day, slept 4, and still barely managed to pay the bills." Cecilia closed her eyes, feeling guilt settle heavily in her chest. While Raphael struggled to survive, she lived in her world of comfort, protected by her father's money, hating a man who was sacrificing himself for her without her knowing. "It was around that time I met Julia," Raphael continued, and there was an apologetic tone in his voice, as if he needed to justify every choice he made. "She worked as a cashier at the supermarket where I bought things for my mother. She was kind to me. She asked how I was. She noticed when I was particularly exhausted." Raphael paused, choosing his words carefully. "We were both broken inside. She had ended a difficult relationship, was alone, with no close family, and I was empty, completely empty. The music was gone. You were gone. My mother was sick. I needed something, anything, to make me feel human again." "Did you love her?" The question came out before Cecilia could hold it back. Raphael met her eyes, and the honesty in his gaze was almost painful. "I tried. I swear I tried. I thought maybe, if I pretended enough, the feeling would come. But it didn't. Julia knew it too. We were two lonely people trying to fill voids that didn't match." They had a civil wedding, no party, no guests beyond Raphael's sick mother and a colleague of Julia's as a witness. 3 months later, Julia discovered she was pregnant. Raphael remembered the expression on her face as she showed him the pharmacy test, a confused mix of fear and hope, as if that baby could fix what was broken between them. "Isabella was born on a rainy April day," Raphael recounted, and for the first time that night, a genuine smile touched his lips. She was tiny, her face red and crumpled, and she cried with surprising strength for someone so small. When the nurse placed her in my arms, I felt something change inside me. "What?" Cecilia whispered. "Responsibility. Purpose. For the first time since I left you, I had something to live for that wasn't just survival. Someone who depended entirely on me. Someone I could protect, educate, give a better future to." But the marriage with Julia continued to crumble, not due to violent arguments or discussions, but by the slow erosion of forced coexistence between two people who should never have tried to build something together. Julia started going out more, coming home late, talking about the life she left behind. Raphael worked so much he barely had energy to argue. When Isabella turned 1, I woke up one morning and found a note on the kitchen table, Raphael said, and his voice grew rougher with the memory. Julia said she couldn't do it anymore. That motherhood wasn't for her. That she needed to find herself. She left a phone number where I could contact her in emergencies, but asked me not to try to make her come back. Did you try? Cecilia asked. No. Raphael shook his head. Because it would have been selfish of me. Forcing her to stay would destroy her and eventually destroy Isabella too. So I let her go. I took on both roles. Father and mother. Provider and caregiver. I started working even more, if that was even possible. Raphael recounted how the following years were a blur of exhaustive work and responsibilities. My mother died when Isabella was 5. It was quick. A sudden heart attack. She was tidying the house when she simply collapsed. The neighbors called me. By the time I got to the hospital, it was too late. I'm so sorry, Cecilia said, holding his hand. And this time, Raphael let the tears flow freely. Not dramatic tears, just the silent kind that comes from an old, finally recognized pain. She was all I had left of my old life, he said, the only person who knew who I was before everything fell apart. After she was gone, I sold the house where I grew up. I used the money to pay off debts and move into a smaller apartment. 2 bedrooms, one for Isabella and me, the other for absolutely nothing, because I had nothing. And the piano? Cecilia asked. When did you sell it? Right after Julia left. Raphael looked at his own hands. I couldn't look at that instrument anymore. Every time I passed it, I remembered you, the music I played for you that last night before everything changed. I sold it to a retired music teacher. He cried when he played the first notes. He said it was an instrument with a soul. I almost backed out of the sale right then. But Isabella needed diapers, medicine, food. The piano was the past. She was the future. Raphael stood up and walked to the window, looking at the illuminated city. For years, I worked as a bricklayer, plumber, electrician, painter, anything that paid well. Isabella grew fast. At 5, she could already read on her own. At 7, she was 2 years ahead in school. Teachers called me constantly, saying she needed greater stimulation, more complex challenges. But stimulation and challenges cost money Raphael didn't have. He made spreadsheets in his worn notebook, calculating every penny, trying to figure out how to pay basic bills and still invest in his daughter's future. That's when he discovered a scholarship program for gifted children at a private technology institute. Isabella passed the test with an almost perfect score, Raphael recounted, turning to Cecilia with pride etched on his face. At 9 years old, she solved logic problems that challenged teenagers. The program coordinator told me she had a rare gift for mathematics and programming, that she could be one of the great minds of the new generation if she had the right opportunities. And does she have them? The opportunities? Cecilia asked. Raphael gave a bitter smile. She has what I can give. The institute offers a full scholarship for classes, but there are materials, a computer, internet, extra courses. I work in 3 different places. Maintenance here at Tech Vision, cleaning at a private school early in the morning, and I help a friend with renovations on weekends. Isabella studies at night, after I finish my last shift. We do homework together at the kitchen table. Cecilia's heart tightened. While she squandered fortunes on clothes she wore once and wines that cost more than Raphael's monthly rent, that man fought heroically to give his daughter a fraction of the opportunities he himself had lost. She needs you, Cecilia said softly. Isabella. She needs her father. And she has me. Raphael returned to the sofa, sitting closer this time. It might not seem like much to an outsider. Our apartment is small, the furniture is old. There's nothing special about it. But when I get home, she runs to hug me. She tells me about the codes she's learning, the problems she's solved, the friends she's made. She knows I do everything for her, and I know she appreciates every sacrifice. Raphael looked directly at Cecilia. I don't regret the choices I made. I don't regret disappearing to protect you. I don't regret raising Isabella alone when Julia left. But I won't lie and say it wasn't difficult. I won't pretend there aren't nights when I wonder how things would have been if they were different. The words hung between them, laden with all the pain and beauty of a life lived with dignity, despite cruel circumstances. Cecilia took both his hands, intertwining their fingers, feeling the calluses that told stories of honest work. And you? Raphael asked. "Tell me about these 15 years, about your life." Cecilia took a deep breath, preparing to open wounds she had carefully kept closed for so long, preparing to confess that, despite all the money and power, her life had been as empty as his had been full of purpose. Outside, the city continued its nocturnal dance of lights and shadows, indifferent to the two hearts that were finally beginning to heal old wounds on that Christmas Eve. Cecilia released Raphael's hands and walked to the bar, pouring 2 more whiskeys. This time, both drank in silence, letting the amber liquid calm their nerves. She leaned against the window, looking at their reflection in the glass, 2 shadows cruelly separated by fate. "After you disappeared," she began, "my father sent me to Paris. He said it was an opportunity to make business contacts, to broaden my business administration education. But I know the truth now. He wanted to keep me away from any possibility of finding you. He wanted time and distance to do their dirty work." Raphael listened in silence, observing the stiffness in her shoulders, the way she held the glass too tightly. "I stayed there for 2 years. Cecilia turned to face him. 2 years living in a luxurious apartment in Mayfair, studying at one of Europe's best business schools, surrounded by interesting people and incredible opportunities. And I was completely dead inside. I went to dinners, attended parties, pretended to smile in photos, but every night before falling asleep I looked at that beautiful city and could only remember you." She took another sip, the whiskey burning less this time. "I met some people, interesting, successful men, the kind my father would approve of. I went out with some of them. I tried to feel something. Anything. But it didn't matter how charming they were, how intelligent, how many languages they spoke, or how many countries they had visited. None of them were you." Raphael stood up and went to her, standing beside her at the window. Below, a couple crossed the street, holding hands, laughing at something only they knew. So simple, so perfect, so impossible. "When I returned to England," Cecilia continued, "my father was already ill. Cancer. He didn't tell me at first, but I noticed. The way he tired faster, how he lost weight, how his decisions at the company became more erratic. He was preparing to pass control of Tech Vision to me. It was a brutal process." Cecilia squeezed her eyes shut, remembering. "My father didn't believe in mercy in business. He tested me constantly, placed impossible obstacles in my path, criticized every decision I made. He said the business world would chew up and spit out a woman who showed weakness. So I hardened. I built walls around myself. I became the queen of silicon everyone knows now." "And relationships?" Raphael asked softly. Cecilia gave a humorless laugh. "I had a few, nothing serious. Executives, investors, other CEOs, people who understood my world, who weren't intimidated by my success. But they were all superficial. Expensive dinners, empty conversations about the stock market, mechanical sex that ended before breakfast. None of them asked me what I truly wanted. None of them realized I was dying of loneliness." She turned to Raphael, her eyes shining with contained tears. "My father died 3 years ago. In the end, when the morphine no longer had an effect, he called me to his hospital room. He said he had done terrible things to protect me. He said he didn't regret it, because his job as a father was to guarantee my future, not my happiness." Raphael felt anger rise in his chest, but he remained silent. He let her continue. "I asked about you. For the first time in all those years, I had the courage to ask directly." He smiled. That cold smile I hated. "He said he had done what was necessary, that you were a risk to my reputation, to the family empire. He said poor men always accept money in the end, without exception. And he showed me documents, bank transfers, signed receipts. They were fake," Raphael said again. "I know that now. But at that time, with my father dying in front of me, I believed it. I thought he was giving me a farewell gift, the truth about the man I loved, proof that my love had been wasted on someone who sold me for money." Cecilia wiped away the tears that finally escaped. He died 3 days later. He left everything to me. The company, the properties, the investments, billions of pounds. And along with all that, the burden of knowing that my father had destroyed my chance at happiness. The silence that followed was dense, with mutual understanding. 2 lives destroyed by a man who thought power gave him the right to control destinies. 2 people who loved each other deeply, separated by lies and manipulations. In the last 3 years, Cecilia continued, I became exactly what my father wanted. Ruthless in business, successful, respected, feared. TechVision doubled in value under my management. We were featured in all the major business magazines. I received awards, invitations to speak at the best universities in the world. But every night I returned home to a huge, empty apartment. She looked at Raphael, and there was a raw vulnerability in her eyes that she never allowed anyone to see. I eliminated music from my life. I don't listen to the radio. I don't go to concerts. I don't have instruments at home, because every note, every melody reminded me of you, of the piano you played, of the songs you created, of the promise of a life that never happened. Raphael took her hand, intertwining their fingers again. We both lost 15 years, 15 years that will never return. Your father stole that from us. But he's dead now, Cecilia said, and there was determination growing in her voice. And we are alive, broken, hurt, with scars that will never completely disappear, but alive. Raphael took a step closer, until there was no more space between them. What do you want, Cecilia? What do you truly want? She looked at him, at that man she had loved with the intensity only the young can love, whom she had hated with the force of someone betrayed, whom she had forgotten and remembered in endless cycles for 15 years. And finally, for the first time in a long time, Cecilia knew exactly what she wanted. I want to make up for lost time. Not in the impossible way. We can't go back in time, but in the only way that matters. From now on. She touched his face. I want to meet Isabella. I want to be a part of your lives, not as a financial savior who will solve all your problems, but as someone who genuinely cares. Raphael felt his heart quicken. What if it doesn't work out? What if our worlds are too incompatible? You live in a luxury penthouse. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment where the shower only heats up when it feels like it. You drive imported cars, I take the bus. You have power and influence, I have bills to pay. Cecilia shook her head. Do you think I care about that? Did any of those material things give me happiness? Look at me, Raphael. Really look. Do you see this successful woman? This powerful executive? Inside, I'm still that 25-year-old girl who fell in love with a poor pianist and cared about nothing else. But Isabella, Raphael hesitated. She's my priority, above all else. If this doesn't work, if you decide you can't handle the reality of my life, I need to protect her. I can't let her get attached to you only to lose you again. Then let's take it slow, Cecilia proposed. Let me meet her. No pressure, no expectations. Just 2 people trying to find out if the love that survived 15 years can also survive reality. Raphael looked into her eyes, searching for any sign of doubt, any hesitation. But he only found determination and hope, the same hope he had kept in a hidden corner of his heart throughout all those years of survival. Tomorrow is Christmas, he said. Isabella will stay up late, waiting for me to arrive. She always waits, no matter what time it is. Then go home, Cecilia said with a smile. Spend Christmas with your daughter, and then when you're ready, call me. We'll talk about the next steps. Raphael nodded, but didn't move. He stood there, looking at her, memorizing every detail as if he were afraid it was all an illusion that would vanish as soon as he blinked. Cecilia leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't a dramatic or passionate kiss. It was soft, laden with silent promises, mutual forgiveness, cautious hope. It was the kind of kiss that marks the end of a painful chapter and the hesitant beginning of something new. When they separated, both were smiling. Small, fragile, but genuine smiles. The first true smiles in a long time. Raphael picked up his toolbox and walked to the door. Before leaving, he turned one last time. For 15 years, I thought I had lost you forever. Now I don't even know what to think. Think about this, Cecilia said, and there was a new sparkle in her eyes. Think that fate can be cruel, but sometimes, just sometimes, it grants second chances. And it's up to us to seize them. Raphael left the office, descended in the private elevator, crossed the lobby still partially decorated for the party. It was almost 2 a.m. when he reached the street. The cold December air cut across his face, but he barely noticed. His head was too full, his heart was beating too fast. Everything within him was reorganizing itself into patterns he no longer recognized. In the taxi back home, looking out the window at the city that never slept, Raphael Miller allowed himself something he hadn't done in a long time. He allowed himself hope. Raphael woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Isabella rustling pots and pans. He slowly opened his eyes, disoriented for a moment. The Christmas morning light streamed through the small bedroom window, illuminating the peeling walls he promised to paint every year but never had time for. The clock read 9 a.m. He had only slept 5 hours, but felt strangely alert. "Dad!" Isabella's voice came from the kitchen. "Are you going to sleep all day? I made pancakes." Raphael smiled and got up, putting on his old sweatpants and faded t-shirt. In the cracked bathroom mirror, he saw the same face as always. But something was different. His eyes. There was a light there that hadn't existed yesterday. Hope he had buried so long ago that he had forgotten what it felt like. In the tiny kitchen, Isabella had prepared their Christmas breakfast. Pancakes slightly burnt at the edges, carton orange juice, and 2 slices of cake left over from last week. It wasn't luxurious, but it was theirs. The girl wore the flannel galaxy print pajamas Raphael had given her for her birthday, her brown hair tied in a messy ponytail. "Merry Christmas, Dad." She hugged him tightly, and Raphael felt his heart clench. 14 years. His daughter was already 14. Soon she would be a young adult, and time was passing too quickly. "Merry Christmas, my gem." He kissed the top of her head. "Sorry I was late last night. The shift was longer than expected." "It's okay." Isabella sat at the table, serving the pancakes. "I took the opportunity to finish the algorithm project. Look." She picked up the old laptop and showed him lines of code that looked like hieroglyphs to Raphael. "I managed to optimize processing time by 30%. Raphael smiled, pretending to understand, feeling pride explode in his chest. "You're incredible. You know that, right?" "I learned from the best." Isabella winked at him. "You always taught me that persistence is worth more than natural talent." They ate in comfortable silence, the kind of silence only truly close people can share. Through the kitchen window, they saw the neighborhood slowly waking up. Children playing in the street with new toys, families heading out for lunches at relatives' homes. It was an ordinary Christmas, but for Raphael, it felt different. "Isa," he finally said, clearing his throat. "I need to tell you something." Isabella looked at him, immediately alert. That tone of voice. She knew him well enough to know when something important was coming. "Is everything okay? You're not sick, are you?" "No, it's nothing like that." Raphael chuckled softly. "It's about something that happened yesterday, at the company party." And then he told her. Not all the sordid details about the men who threatened him, not the most painful parts about his mother and the years of struggle. But he told her about Cecilia, about the love they shared when they were young, about the forced separation, about the unexpected reunion the night before. Isabella listened with wide eyes, processing every word. When Raphael finished, she remained silent for a long moment, the wheels turning in her brilliant mind. "So," she said slowly, "you loved this woman before you met my mother?" "Yes." Raphael saw no point in lying. "I loved her deeply, but when they separated me from her, I thought I'd never see her again. Your mother and I tried to build something together, and you were the best result of that. Never forget that. Isabella nodded. And now? What's going to happen? I don't know. Raphael held his daughter's hands across the table. Cecilia wants to meet us. She wants to be a part of our lives. But I won't let that happen unless you're comfortable. You are my priority. Always have been. Always will be. She's rich, right? Isabella asked, and there was no judgment in her voice, just curiosity. Like, really rich? Very rich, Raphael confirmed. Executive director of one of the country's largest tech companies. Isabella was quiet again, and Raphael could almost see the algorithm running in her head, weighing variables, calculating probabilities. Do you still love her? The question caught him off guard. He thought about lying, softening it, but Isabella deserved honesty. I never stopped, even when I tried, even when I married your mother. There was always a part of me that was still hers. Then I think we should meet her, Isabella said simply. If she makes you happy, I want to meet her. But Dad, she looked directly into his eyes, and there was a maturity there that shouldn't exist in someone so young. If she hurts you, I'll hack all her systems. Raphael laughed, relieved and proud at the same time. Deal. But let's hope we don't need to do that. He picked up his worn cell phone and typed the message with trembling fingers. It was just a number, not even saved in his contacts. But Cecilia had written it on a business card before he left. The message was simple. Isabella wants to meet you. How about this afternoon? The reply came in less than a minute. I'll be there at 3 p.m. Send the address. Raphael sent the address and looked around the apartment with new eyes. Suddenly, he saw all the imperfections he usually ignored. The peeling paint on the walls, the worn sofa, the small old television, the faded curtains. It wasn't exactly shame, but an acute awareness of the differences between their worlds. Dad, Isabella said, reading his thoughts, if she cares about those things, then she's not worth it anyway. You're right, but even so, let's tidy up a bit, just so it doesn't look like we live in a storage unit. They spent the next few hours cleaning the apartment. Raphael washed the dishes, organized the living room, tried to disguise the damp stains on the ceiling. Isabella tidied her room, put away scattered clothes, arranged books on the makeshift shelf. By 2:40 p.m., both were dressed. Raphael wore the only dress pants he owned, a light blue shirt Isabella had given him for his last birthday. Isabella chose the simple but pretty dress she wore on special occasions, tying her hair in a bun. Nervous? Isabella asked, seeing her father check his watch for the 10th time in 5 minutes. Terrified, Raphael admitted. And you? Curious. She shrugged. But also a little nervous. I've never met someone my dad loved before. It's strange. At exactly 3 p.m., the doorbell rang. Raphael took a deep breath, exchanged a look with Isabella, and opened the door. Cecilia was there, but she wasn't the powerful executive from the night before. She wore simple jeans, a white blouse, comfortable sneakers. Her hair was tied in a ponytail, almost no makeup. She held a brown paper bag in her hands, and there was evident nervousness in her eyes. Hi, she said, her voice softer than she intended. Hi. Raphael stepped aside. Come in. Cecilia entered the small apartment, and Raphael watched her reaction carefully. She looked around, taking in every detail, but there was no judgment in her gaze. There was something different, almost like reverence, as if she were entering a sacred place. You must be Isabella. Cecilia turned to the girl, smiling with genuine warmth. Your father has told me a lot about you. Isabella studied Cecilia with the same intensity with which she studied programming code. He told me about you too. Basically, you're a tragic romance interrupted that finally had a dramatic reunion at a Christmas party. Quite novelistic. Cecilia let out a surprised laugh, and the tension in the air considerably lessened. I like her, she said to Raphael. Intelligent and direct. It's her specialty. Raphael smiled. Sit down. Want some coffee? They settled into the small living room, Cecilia sat on the worn sofa, Isabella in the armchair. Raphael went to make coffee in the kitchen, but stayed close enough to hear everything. Cecilia opened the bag she had brought. "I brought a few things," she said, pulling out 3 books. "I saw you like programming, so I thought you might like these. Algorithm analysis, artificial intelligence, and game development. They're recent additions." Isabella took the books carefully, her eyes shining. "I've seen these titles in the school library. I never managed to buy them. Now they're yours. And there's this too." Cecilia pulled out a smaller box. "It's an Arduino kit. I thought you might enjoy working with hardware too." Isabella looked at her father, silently asking for permission. Raphael nodded, smiling. The girl opened the box as if it were the most precious treasure in the world. "Seriously?" She looked at Cecilia. "I've always wanted to tinker with electronics. There are so many projects I want to do." "Then now you can." Cecilia smiled. "And if you need help, I have some engineers at the company who would love to mentor you." Raphael brought the coffee, serving it in mismatched mugs. They talked for hours. Cecilia asked about Isabella's studies, about her dreams, about what she wanted to do when she grew up. And unlike other adults, she truly listened to the answers, asked follow-up questions, showed genuine interest. "I want to work with AI applied to medicine," Isabella explained, her eyes shining with passion. "Algorithms that can detect patterns in exams that human doctors might miss. Save lives through code." "That's a beautiful dream," Cecilia said, and there was no condescension in her voice. "And you will achieve it. With your intelligence and determination, I have no doubt." As the afternoon progressed, Raphael watched the interaction between them with growing relief. There was no tension, no discomfort. Cecilia didn't try to impress with money or power. She was just herself. Or rather, she was the version of herself that Raphael had known 15 years ago, before the world hardened her. As the sun began to set, painting the sky orange and pink, Isabella stood up. "I'll let you two talk alone. I have code to write. And thank you for the gifts. Seriously, they're perfect." She went to her room, closing the door politely. Raphael and Cecilia were left alone, and suddenly, the small living room seemed even smaller. "She's incredible," Cecilia said. "You've done a wonderful job raising her." "I had help," Raphael joked. "She practically raised herself." "That doesn't diminish your merit." Cecilia leaned forward. "Raphael, I know our worlds are very different, but today, here, I felt more at home than I have in years in my luxury apartment." "Why?" "Because here there's love. There's purpose. There's real life." Raphael took her hand. "And now, what's the next step?" Cecilia smiled. "Now, we build something new, slowly, without rushing, respecting Isabella's time, respecting her needs. I don't want to invade your lives. I want to be a part of them, if you'll have me." "I think we already have," Raphael said, and it was true. A year later, Fifth Avenue gleamed with the same Christmas lights that marked Raphael and Cecilia's reunion. But this time, everything was different. Raphael looked out the taxi window, wearing a new suit he had bought himself with his music teacher's salary. Beside him, Isabella adjusted her elegant but discreet dress, nervous but excited. In front, Cecilia drove personally, insisting she wanted to take them both to the party. In the past 12 months, a lot had changed. Raphael no longer worked as a caretaker. With Cecilia's encouragement, he had gone back to studying, completing the music degree he had abandoned years ago. Now he taught at a community school, teaching underprivileged children to play donated instruments. The salary was modest, but the satisfaction of returning to music, of playing again without it hurting, was inestimable. Isabella thrived. She continued in the scholarship program, but now she had mentors from Tech Vision guiding her, better computers to work with, access to courses that were once impossible dreams. But the most important part was that she had gained not just resources, but an expanded family. Cecilia didn't try to replace the mother Isabella had barely known. She was simply present. The relationship between Raphael and Cecilia grew slowly, like a delicate plant that needs constant care. Simple dinners in their apartment, walks in the park on Sundays, late-night conversations about everything and nothing. They learned each other again, discovering that the love from 15 years ago had matured, becoming deeper, more real. It wasn't easy. There were moments of insecurity, when Raphael felt intimidated by her success, when he questioned if he truly belonged in that world. There were moments when Cecilia needed to deal with the consequences of years of loneliness, learning to open her heart again. But they persisted, because both knew that what they had was too rare to waste. The car stopped in front of the Millennium Tower. Raphael felt a powerful déjà vu. A year ago, he had entered through those same doors as an invisible caretaker. Today he entered as an honored guest, hand in hand with the woman he loved and the daughter who was his. Pride. "You're nervous," Cecilia observed, squeezing his hand. "A little," Raphael admitted. "Last time I played piano in front of so many people, I was running from ghosts. This time," she smiled, "you're celebrating the future." They entered the lobby, elegantly decorated for Christmas. The Tech Vision Company party was in full swing. Executives, employees, investors, all circulating with champagne glasses, chatting animatedly. But there was something different this year. The atmosphere was lighter, more human. Cecilia had changed the company culture, prioritizing employee well-being over stratospheric profits. Many people greeted Raphael and Isabella warmly. Employees who knew him from his maintenance days, surprised and happy with his transformation. Others who had become friends in recent months, who appreciated the humility and authenticity he brought to Cecilia's social circle. The party flowed naturally. Excellent food, soft ambient music, interesting conversations. But everyone knew the most anticipated moment was yet to come. At 10 o'clock at night, Cecilia stepped onto the small stage set up in the center of the hall. The buzz died down. All attention turned to her. "Good evening, everyone," she began, her voice firm but laden with emotion. "A year ago, this party marked a crucial moment in my life. It was when I realized that all the success in the world means nothing if you have no one to share it with, if you are living a life that is not truly your own." People listened attentively. Isabella held Raphael's hand, feeling the tension in the air. "This year has been one of transformations. For the company, yes, but mainly for me. I learned that true strength isn't in never showing vulnerability, but in having the courage to open your heart, even after it's been broken. I learned that family isn't defined by blood or impressive surnames, but by who chooses to stand by your side in difficult times." Cecilia extended her hand to Raphael. "And tonight, I want to share with you not just my professional success, but my personal happiness. Raphael, would you come up here?" Raphael stepped onto the stage to warm applause. His heart beat fast, but not from fear, from anticipation. He knew what was coming. They had planned it together. "A year ago," Cecilia continued, "this man played a song in this very hall, a song only the two of us knew. And that moment changed everything. Today, we're going to play together." A grand piano had been positioned beside the stage. Raphael sat down, adjusted the distance, placed his hands on the keys. Those keys that were once his life, then became his torment, and now were his joy again. He began to play the same melody from the previous night, but there was something different now. It was no longer melancholic. It was hopeful. The same notes, but with transformed intention. As he played, Cecilia walked to a case hidden behind the stage. She took out a violin, the instrument she had abandoned after Raphael disappeared, which she hadn't played in 15 years. With initially trembling hands, she positioned the violin on her shoulder, adjusted the bow, and joined the melody. The duet was imperfect. Cecilia was rusty, some notes were off, but it was perfect in its imperfection. It was the union of two souls that time had separated but couldn't destroy. It was physical proof that new beginnings are possible, that scars can transform into stories of triumph. The hall was in complete silence, everyone absorbed by the music and the story it told. Isabella cried discreetly, moved to see her father and Cecilia finally complete. Employees wiped away tears, touched by the genuineness of the moment. When the music ended, the applause was deafening. But Raphael didn't hear it. His eyes were fixed on Cecilia, who smiled with tears streaming down her face. She put the violin aside, and Raphael rose from the piano. What happened next wasn't planned. It wasn't part of the script they had agreed upon. But Raphael knew, with absolute certainty, that it was the right moment. He dropped to one knee right there, on stage, in front of 200 people and took a small box from his pocket. Cecilia brought a hand to her mouth, genuine surprise etched on her face. Cecilia Vance Allister, Raphael began, and his voice trembled just a little. 15 years ago, I was going to ask you to marry me. I had a cheap ring I bought with money I saved from giving private lessons. I had a beautiful speech memorized, but I never had the chance to make that proposal. He opened the small box, revealing a simple white gold ring with a small diamond. It wasn't ostentatious. It didn't cost a fortune, but it was bought with honest money from a man who rebuilt his life with dignity. This year, I managed to make that proposal. But this time, I'm not asking the 25-year-old girl I knew. I'm asking the 41-year-old woman who chose to stand by my side despite the differences, who accepted my daughter as her own, who reminded me that I can be more than a survivor. I can be happy. Tears streamed freely down Cecilia's face now. She looked at Isabella in the audience, who nodded enthusiastically, giving her approval. "Marry me?" Raphael finally asked. "Not because I'm rich or successful, not because I can give you luxuries, but because I love you with everything I am, with everything I have. Marry me and build a family with us?" The silence that followed lasted only seconds, but felt like an eternity. Then Cecilia said, her voice choked but firm, "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Raphael placed the ring on her finger, stood up and kissed her as the hall erupted in applause, whistles, and collective tears. It was the kind of moment that seems straight out of a script, but happens in real life when people have the courage to fight for love. Isabella ran to the stage, and the three embraced, a family finally complete, united not by blood or circumstances, but by choice, by love that survived the impossible. In the following months, their story became a legend at TechVision. The caretaker who was a pianist, the lonely executive, the love that time couldn't erase. Employees spoke of them with reverence, as proof that fairy tales can happen in real life, even if they first come disguised as tragedy. Raphael and Cecilia married in a small, intimate ceremony in early April, with only close family and true friends. Isabella was the maid of honor, wearing a dress. She chose herself, smiling from ear to ear as she watched her father finally achieve the happiness he deserved. They didn't pretend that social differences magically disappeared. Raphael maintained his independence, continued working as a teacher, refused any position in Cecilia's company that seemed like a favor. She respected this, understanding that his dignity came from building his own path, but they built bridges between their worlds, creating a space where both could be authentic. Isabella flourished. At 15, she was already developing applications that caught the attention of American universities. But more important than academic successes was the fact that she finally had a complete family. A father who was always there, a stepmother who genuinely loved her, and the emotional security every child deserves. The night after the wedding, Raphael and Cecilia were alone in the new apartment they had chosen together. It wasn't her penthouse nor his small apartment. It was something between their two worlds, a home built together. Raphael sat at the piano Cecilia had insisted on buying, not as expensive as the one at the company, but beautiful and in tune. "Do you regret it?" she asked, hugging him from behind. Waiting 15 years? Raphael pondered the question. The years of struggle, the pain of separation, the lonely nights. But he also thought of Isabella, of the years that shaped him into the man he was today, of the lessons suffering had taught. "I don't regret it," he finally said, "because everything I went through brought me here, made me able to appreciate this. If I hadn't lost you, maybe I would never have known how much you mean." Cecilia kissed the top of his head. "We lost 15 years, but we have the rest of our lives to make up for it." And they did. They had lazy Sunday mornings, family dinners at the kitchen table, silly arguments about which movie to watch. They had Christmases where Isabella woke up too early and dragged them both to open presents. They had the ordinary, the common, the everyday that is more precious than any grand gesture. Raphael began composing again, not for fame or recognition, but for the pure joy of creating. Cecilia learned to play the violin again, and they spent nights making music together, filling the house with melodies that were uniquely theirs. Isabella sometimes recorded these sessions, saying she wanted to remember them when she was an adult, when she had her own family. Raphael and Cecilia's story didn't have a perfect fairy tale ending because perfect endings don't exist in real life. They had challenges, arguments, difficult days, but they also had love. Love that chose to remain even when it was hard. Love that survived 15 years of separation and returned stronger. And perhaps in the end, that is the true magic. Not in destinies that align perfectly, but in people who choose to fight for love despite the scars. In second chances that don't erase the past, but build a better future. In families that are not defined by blood, but by who chooses to stay. That night after the wedding, with Cecilia asleep beside him, and the certainty that Isabella was safely asleep in the next room, Raphael Miller finally allowed himself to believe in something he had abandoned long ago. That despite all the pain, all the struggle, all the suffering, life could still surprise. It could still give unexpected gifts. It could still, against all odds, bring true happiness. And as the city of London gleamed outside, indifferent to the human dramas unfolding in its millions of homes, a small but complete family slept in peace, united by love that time tested but could not destroy, united by the daily choice to remain, to build, to believe, united forever. End of story. If Raphael, Cecilia, and Isabella's journey touched your heart, know that we have many more exciting stories waiting for you. Stories of love that overcomes obstacles, of families that rebuild themselves, of ordinary people living extraordinary moments. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any narrative that will make you believe that second chances exist and that true love is worth every sacrifice. Leave a like if you were moved and tell us in the comments which moment touched your heart the most. Your interaction helps us bring more soul-warming stories. See you on the next journey.